Sam Allardyce. But in boxing, a good night for Amir Khan, who was making the first defence of his WBA light welterweight title. Khan took just 76 seconds to stop Dmitriy Salita in Newcastle. The fight promoter Frank Warren joins us. Hello, Frank.
Morning, Gary.
An excellent performance then from Khan.
Yeah, I mean, it was over it was very short and sweet. He caught him for a peach of a shot, and he just never recovered from it, Salita. And great win for Amir. I was hoping for a longer fight, but you can't. What can you do? You can't do no better than what he did last night, which was take his man out in style.
Yeah, so you were really surprised because he had a decent record, Salita, didn't he?
Yeah, you see him. He was the number one contender. It wasn't a fight that I made. It was a fight made by the WBA. He was their mandatory contender, and he had to do it. But his record was 30 fights, and he hadn't been defeated in any of them. Been the distance, won quite, won them and won some of them in styles, but it just wasn't good enough for Amir.
Who are the options?
Maybe it's a little bit like looking at Amir when he got beat by Prescott. It can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in hindsight, maybe that was a good thing for him. Who knows? The options for the next fight, could it honestly be Ricky Hatton, or is that fight never going to happen?
I know about him. I mean, I've said many times to Gary that I don't feel that Ricky Hatton should fight anymore. It's crazy. You only got to look at the size of him. Maybe he could get himself down to the weight, do all these things. But one thing for sure, his reflexes, his legs have gone. He's not the same fighter he was. He won't be able to get out of the way of Amir, and I don't think it'll be the next fight anyway. For Ricky to be able to fight, it's really going to take him about 6-7 months to get himself in some shape.
So, who will Khan fight next then, realistically?
Not sure yet. We've got to talk to the WBA on Monday and see what they were talking about another mandatory defence, which obviously we'd prefer not to have. We've got to see where we go from there. There are a couple of options, and it's also where the fight's going to take place. But Amir and his team and myself will sit down and we'll have some talks over the next couple of weeks. See where we go with it.
Possibly then it'll take place in America, will it?
It is a possibility, but it's not a definite. It's not a definite. A lot of things have been said in the last week or so or reported, regarding Amir, and some of them, I was a little bit not too happy about. But the facts of the matter are, he's a very, very popular sportsman. The crowd loved it last night. The 10,000 there were cheering him to the rafters, and I think he appreciated that. And I think he said last night at the press conference he would like to, obviously wants to continue fighting here, but like every fighter, he'd like to fight at Madison Square Gardens or Vegas. That's any fighter's ambition and dream.
Yes, you're making reference, I think, to his quote in the week, "I'd be a superstar if I was white." What do you make of that quote? Were you surprised to hear him say that?
Yeah, but I think he's done a lot of pressure over the last week. You think in your time in sport, Gary, how many have people ever sort of talked about Frank Bruno's colour, or Joe Bugler getting booed and coming from Hungary, or David Hayes' colour? When the bombings happened in London, you're a Muslim. What do you feel about this? He was 17 years old at the time. And it's crazy to keep putting it on. He's a British sportsman, and that's it. And I think what was happening last week when he was asked that question, it was in relation to some of the racist postings that were put on some internet sites. And I think that keep pushing him on these things, keep giving it, the media keep asking him about colour, I think is unfair.
Yes, because you mentioned Frank Bruno. You obviously promoted him, and Lennox Lewis, Rio Ferdinand, Lewis Hamilton. They've all been really big stars in their respective sports.
But forget the colour, they're all Brits, and why are you asking somebody every time about colour? It only seems to happen with him, and I find it strange, and or making references to it. We're in a multicultural society, and he's represented Britain as good as any British sportsman. He won a silver medal and was proud to do it. And Union Jack, his dad if you remember, had a Union Jack waistcoat on in the Olympic Games, and he's gone on since and done great for us in as far as boxing's concerned. And I just wish all this stuff. I wish that people would stop trying to put pressure on him and keep putting this onto him. At the end of the day, he's a boxer, and let's talk about what he does. The boxing's not about his colour or his ethnicity. Okay,
so last question about what he does next. I know he's going to go off and help prepare Manny Pacquiao and spar and train with him. Could that fight ever happen with Pacquiao? Is that a possibility at all?
Well, it'd be a bit difficult because of obviously they share the same trainer in Freddie Roach, but who knows in time? They're professional fighters, and maybe a couple of years down the road, if Manny Pacquiao's still around, it may be a fight that takes place.
Sounding unlikely though from that answer you gave.
Well, who's Freddie? who's Freddie Rose going to train? Manny Pacquiao's standing for election for an MP in his own country in April after his fight on March 13th against Mayweather. He's standing for election, so maybe he may decide to quit.
Yeah, that's the more likely scenario, I guess.
Maybe. You never know. Who knows what's happened to him? Listen, if he does, he's a very sensible guy. He's made a lot of money. He's got his senses intact, and he's a national hero. And I think that there are certain fighters who should heed that and think about what's good for themselves and for their families.
Frank Warren, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's fight promoter Frank Warren. Darren Lewis, first of all, the contest. There wasn't much of one against Dmitriy Salita.
No, knocked him down 3 times in the first 76 seconds.
I was glad he did it at that point because I had him behind on points at that stage. But it was an impressive win.
Indeed it was, and he's showing basically showing sort of lightning quick instincts of being able to put guys down who aren't capable of doing him any damage. The referee stepped in, saved Salita after the third knockdown, and it never happened to him before, as Frank was saying. I've got to take issue just very quickly with what Frank was saying about the whole "I'd be a superstar if I was white," because
you've got actually we printed up the story from earlier in the week.
Indeed, yeah, we've got the transcript of it here, and I just think that Frank says maybe he'd wish people wouldn't stop asking it, but he's a sporting icon. We talk about football unifying people. We're in South Africa next year, where it's going to unify the country, and like it or not, Amir Khan is a sporting icon, and sport basically brings people together, brings different races of people and classes of people
He's not
together.
quite a superstar at the moment, but he's a star sportsman, isn't he? A star boxer.
Well, the key thing is that he's 22 years old, so his career is still on an upward trajectory, and I think for that reason, yes, he's very young, but the organisations and newspapers are asking him these questions. They're mass market newspapers who are able to project him, so you've got to take one with the other, really.